Hello and welcome to this edition of Minstrels on the Block, where we bring you the finest singer-songwriters in the Valley area. This week's special guest, Mr. Jonathan Edwards, who is a member, the lead player of one of the hardest working rock bands in the Valley area, Ophir Drive. Also a singer-songwriter in his own right. John, glad to have you on the show.
I wore my shades just for you, man.
Awesome. The man's got class. So tell me about yourself, man. Where were you born?
I was born in Luverne, Alabama. But I was brought up in Greenville, Alabama, where my family's from. The hospital in Greenville has a nasty reputation, so it's probably good that I was born in the next town up. But I was raised in Greenville, and then my dad joined the military to take care of us, and so we traveled all over, and eventually came back when I was a teenager, or probably a little bit before then, and then I decided I wanted to get out of Greenville because it was a small town, you know, not a lot to do. So I finally wound my way into Columbus. Here I am playing music.
Small towns are wonderful and quaint, but opportunities they do not have.
Yeah, Mellencamp said it best.
Born in a small town? Yeah. Now, so your dad joined the military. Tell me about some of your experiences as far as being a military kid. I was a military kid, actually.
Yeah, you know, I was real little then, so it's only so much that I remember, but we spent time all over the Midwest, and then in Germany, we spent a long time in Germany, like 2 years. So that was definitely a culture shock. You know, I probably would have been more so if I'd have been older and seen it with adult eyes, but even as a child, it was a lot different. I was definitely glad to be back, though.
Yeah, I can imagine. Was your family musical at all?
No, I'm really the only one. I think my mom was in band when she was in like middle school or something, but you know, nothing that I ever experienced by the time that I came around.
All right. Well, when did you get your first guitar?
I had to have been like 15. I know that I'd asked my dad for one for Christmas like many years in a row, and he was like, you know, he didn't want to spend the money, and then me put it down like so many kids do, you know.
Yeah.
But I guess my persistence paid off, and it's a good thing I got it before I was 16 because, you know, I didn't have a car, and we lived really far out in the country, so there really wasn't much to do. So I wound up putting in a lot of practice time that first year, and so that was really good, you know. Got my skill up really quick, and I pretty much took off, you know, right away.
That's cool. Now, as far as, tell me about your hometown, where you actually, you know, the area you were born. Do you have any memories of that?
Oh yeah, I've got plenty of memories of my hometown. Most of them are the stupid things we did to entertain ourselves. It was, you know, the classic small town. It was just nothing to do, and a bunch of kids that were angry about that.
Yeah. Now, when you moved here, you were obviously, by the time you got here, already playing music.
Oh yeah.
So tell me about some of that. Tell me about your learning process.
Well, pretty much like everybody, you know, I started out just forming some garage bands with my friends from school, and we would all like learn our favorite covers or just jam. That was my favorite thing to do, is just see what would happen. And eventually, you know, actual bands would come out of that. And before I turned 21, I played a lot of like parties and get-togethers and things like that. But then eventually, you know, I kind of outgrew that. And plus, there's only so many cow pastures and living rooms you can play in that town that I'm from. So then I wound up using the bulletin board, which is this free classified it's in the Montgomery area, and I used that to find bands that join in Montgomery and Op and Andalusia and just anywhere that I could find people that were looking for guitar players. I would go and play with those guys. So I wound up being in and out of a lot of bands really quick.
Yeah. Now, as far as your songwriting is concerned, tell me about that.
Well, I didn't actually start songwriting. I guess that's not true. The garage bands in high school were pretty much all my projects, and we wrote a lot of songs together, but I wouldn't really consider myself being an actual singer-songwriter until closer to before I moved to Columbus. You know, mostly I played lead guitar in bands, and even the garage bands that I wrote songs on, those were just vehicles for me to play guitar solos over.
The man had a plan.
as I grew older and wanted to do more than just shred and got some life experience, and I got more interested in the songwriting, and so that kind of slowly evolved. And then when I moved to Columbus, I met a lot more like-minded people that weren't just all about being in rock and roll bands and doing crazy stuff in bars and stuff. They were really more about the craft of songwriting, and a lot of people here like to write songs and don't even play them out. They just want to sell them to somebody in Nashville, and so I got involved with those guys, and they really helped me start to look at it more as a craft than just an outlet.
Right. Well, tell me what inspires you as far as when you sit down and write a song. What experiences do you pull from, or is it like purely fictional? Because I've written songs that were very close to me, and I've written songs that were I just wrote them for the heck of it, just for fun. So how do you sit down and write a song?
It's different every time. I don't really have a certain methodology, and I prefer it that way because I don't want to limit myself.
Right.
And sometimes I'll just be doodling with the guitar, and I'll come up with something that I find interesting, and I'm like, I really like that. That needs to be a song. Right. And then I'll work on it, come up with the next parts, and try to make some lyrics fit or whatever. And then sometimes, I'll just be at work and I'll think of a line. I'm like, man, that's got to be a song. Yeah. So the song starts from a lyric instead of a piece of music. And then sometimes, you just sit there and it just strikes you like lightning, and a song comes out in 5 minutes. Yeah. And I like all of those things. It feels good to have just divine intervention and have a song come out, but it also feels good to really pound one out and put a lot of work into it and make it what you want it to be.
A lot of satisfaction in that. I've got both myself. I've like you. I don't have a certain methodology. I just whatever comes along. Now, approaching in a second segment, we'll get more into it, but tell me about your meeting Sarah J. of Ophir Drive and that formation.
Well, that's actually a pretty good story. Like I was saying, I got involved with some of the songwriters here in Columbus, and they formed a local chapter of the NSAI, which is like a songwriters group that they help songwriters hone their craft and get their songs into the hands of publishers and things like that. And I started hanging out with those guys just to try and kind of see how they did it and learn a few things about songwriting and the network mostly, because I'd just gotten into this town and I wanted to meet who's who and find out what's what, And there was one meeting in particular where Sarah had just moved here, and she came to one of those meetings. And her and I were the closest in age of the group. Most of the other guys and girls were 40s and 50s and all. And, back then, me and Sarah were in our mid-20s, and we both like rock and roll. And most of these guys are like country and contemporary Christian writers and stuff. So we sat next to each other and talked about music and stuff. And as I said, I'm trying to get into the singer-songwriter thing, And I was talking to her about my background. I was like, mostly I was lead guitar players in bands and stuff. And she's like, oh, well, you can play lead guitar for me. I'm going to start a band. And I'm like, didn't you hear what I said? I'm trying to do my own thing. Forget you, And anyway, later on, I heard her sing, and so I came up to her and I was like, you know what? I can work for you. She's one of the best singers in town, bar none.
She is a phenomenal vocalist and a very talented musician.
It would have took that for me to put what I was doing on hold, because it's mine. I wanted to do mine, and she was so good that I was like, oh yeah, we can do a project. Yeah, you certainly wouldn't want to just join a band, just any mediocre band, to be lead. Sarah definitely has a unique sound and some really good songs. I've enjoyed watching her play. I don't get out much because of my schedule, see her on the weekends, which I really need to make some time for that. But so now going into the second segment, we'll talk about some of your experiences. In fact, I believe some cinema stuff that you talked about just a moment ago. But now, as far as the members of Ophir Drive, like there's Austin, there's John, how steady are they as band members? They've been the most steady so far, and it's just been like it's been basically Spinal Tap for us. You know, we've had so many drummers and so many bass players.
Yeah.
Our first bass player, Matt Austin, he stuck with us for a long time, and he was real rock solid, you know. So we didn't really have any problems with him, but we just all the time had to cycle out drummers.
Yeah.
And it's part of it is just because we take every gig that comes our way, and so a lot of times, you know, most of us all have different projects, and for whatever reason a person may not be available, so we'll get somebody to replace them, and then we spend a lot of time working with them. And so we've worked with let's see, 3, 4, 5, like 6 or 7 drummers.
Wow.
Over 2 years, and John has been our main guy for the most part, you know, but he's the most in-demand drummer basically in town, so sometimes he's not there and we have to find a replacement still. And Austin is quickly becoming the most in-demand bass player in town, but I mean we've only had to replace him once or twice, so he's mostly there for us every time. So
that's cool.
It's been a lot better now that we've had the same rhythm section.
Yeah, you can build a rapport. Well, we're going to go to one of John's songs and have a listen, and we'll be right back after these messages.